Part 2, Chapter 20 of 800 Leagues on the Amazon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Scott Robbins. 800 Leagues on the Amazon by Jules Verne. Part 2, The Cryptogram. Chapter 20, The Lower Amazon. Little remains to tell of the second part of the voyage down the mighty river. It was but a series of days of joy. Joam Dacosta returned to a new life, which shed its happiness on all who belonged to him. The giant raft glided along with greater rapidity on the waters now swollen by the floods. On the left they passed the small village of Don José de Maturi, and on the right the mouth of that Madeira which owes its name to the floating masses of vegetable remains and trunks denuded of their foliage which it bears from the depths of Bolivia. They passed the archipelago of Canini, whose islets are veritable boxes of palms, and before the village of Serpa, which, successively transported from one back to the other, has definitely settled on the left of the river, with its little houses, whose thresholds stand on the yellow carpet of the beach. The village of Silves, built on the left of the Amazon, and the town of Villa Bela, which is the principal Guarana market in the whole province, were soon left behind by the giant raft. And so was the village of Faro, and its celebrated river of the Namundas, on which in 1539 Orellana asserted he was attacked by female warriors who had never been seen again since, and thus gave us the legend which justifies the immortal name of the river of the Amazons. Here it is that the province of Rio Negro terminates. The jurisdiction of Para then commences, and on the 22nd of September the family, marveling much at a valley which has no equal in the world, entered that portion of the Brazilian Empire which has no boundary to the east except the Atlantic. "How magnificent!" remarked Minha over and over again. "How long!" murmured Manuel. "How beautiful!" repeated Lina. "When shall we get there?" murmured Fragoso. And this was what might have been expected of these folks, from the different points of view, though time passed pleasantly enough with them all the same. Benito, who was neither patient nor impatient, had recovered all his former good humor. Soon the jangada glided between the interminable plantations of cocoa trees, with their somber green flanked by the yellow thatch or ruddy tiles of the roofs of the huts of the settlers on both banks, from Obidos up to the town of Monto Alegre. Then there opened out of the mouth of the Rio Trombetas, bathing with its black waters the houses of Obidos, situated at about 180 miles from Belém, quite a small town, and even a citade, with large streets bordered with handsome habitations, and a great center for cocoa produce. Then they saw another tributary, the Tapajos, with its greenish-gray water descending from the southwest, and then Santarém, a wealthy town of not less than 5,000 inhabitants, Indians for the most part, whose nearest houses were built on the vast beach of white sand. After its departure from Manaos, the jangada did not stop anywhere as it passed down the much less encumbered course of the Amazon. Day and night it moved along under the vigilant care of its trusty pilot. No more stoppages either for the gratification of the passengers or for business purposes. Unceasingly it progressed, and the end rapidly grew nearer. On leaving Alemque, situated on the left bank, a new horizon appeared in view. In place of the curtain of forest which had shut them in up to then, our friends beheld a foreground of hills, whose undulations could be easily descried, and beyond them the faint summits of veritable mountains vandyked across the distant depth of sky. Neither Yaquita, nor her daughter, nor Lina, nor old Cybele had ever seen anything like this. But in this jurisdiction of Para, Manuel was at home. and he could tell them the names of the double chain which gradually narrowed the valley of the huge river. "To the right," said he, "that is the Sierra de Paracuarta, which curves in a half circle to the south. To the left, that is the Sierra de Curuva, of which we have already passed the first outposts." "Then they close in?" asked Fragoso. "They close in," replied Manoel. And the two men seemed to understand each other, for the same slight but significant nodding of the head accompanied the question and reply. At last, notwithstanding the tide, which since leaving Óbidos had begun to be felt, and which somewhat checked the progress of the raft, the town of Monte Alegre was passed, and then that of Pravanha de Onteiro, then the mouth of the Xingu, frequented by Yurumas Indians, whose principal industry consists in preparing their enemies' heads for natural history cabinets. To what a superb size the Amazon had now developed, as already this monarch of rivers gave signs of opening out like a sea. Plants from 8 to 10 feet high clustered along the beach, and bordered it with a forest of reeds. Porto de Mos, Boa Vista, and Gurupa, whose prosperity is on the decline, were soon among the places left in the rear. Then the river divided into two important branches, which flowed off toward the Atlantic, one going away northeastward, the other eastward, and between them appeared the beginning of the large island of Marajo. This island is quite a province in itself. It measures no less than 180 leagues in circumference. Cut up by marshes and rivers, all savanna to the east, all forest to the west, it offers most excellent advantages for the raising of cattle, which can here be seen in their thousands. This immense barricade of Marajo is the natural obstacle which has compelled the Amazon to divide before precipitating its torrents of water into the sea. Following the upper branch, the jangada, after passing the islands of Caviana and Mexiana, and would have found an embouchure of some 50 leagues across, but it would also have met with the bar of the Poruroca, that terrible eddy which, for 3 days preceding the new or full moon, takes but 2 minutes instead of 6 hours to raise the river from 12 to 15 feet above ordinary high water mark. This is by far the most formidable of tide races. Most fortunately the lower branch, known as the Canal of Breves, which is the natural area of the Para, is not subject to the visitations of this terrible phenomenon, and its tides are of a more regular description. Araujo, the pilot, was quite aware of this. He steered therefore into the midst of magnificent forests, here and there gliding past islands covered with muritis palms, and the weather was so favorable that they did not experience any of the storms which so frequently rage along this Breves canal. A few days afterward the jangada passed the village of the same name, which, although built on the ground flooded for many months in the year, has become, since 1845, an important town of 100 houses. Throughout these districts, which are frequented by Tapuyas, the Indians of the lower Amazon become more and more commingled with the white population, and promise to be completely absorbed by them. And still the jangada continued its journey down the river. Here, at the risk of entanglement, it grazed the branches of the mangliers, whose roots stretched down into the waters like the claws of gigantic crustaceans, then the smooth trunks of the paletuvieres, with their pale green foliage, served as the resting places for the long poles of the crew as they kept the raft in the strength of the current. Then came the Tocantins, whose waters, due to the different rivers of the province of Goiás, mingle with those of the Amazon by an embouchure of great size, then the Moju, then the town of Santa Ana. Majestically the panorama of both banks moved along without a pause, as though some ingenious mechanism necessitated its unrolling in the opposite direction to that of the stream. Already numerous vessels descending the river, ubas, egariteas, vigilandas, pirogues of all builds, and small coasters from the lower districts of the Amazon and the Atlantic seaboard, formed a procession with the giant raft, and seemed like sloops beside some mighty man of war. At length there appeared on the left Santa Maria de Belém do Pará, the town, as they call it in that country, with its picturesque lines of white houses at many